Hello and welcome to the LNN weekly recap with the latest foreign updates alongside domestic alerts. Now, our most developing situation is that the Kingdom of Alburia, as you may remember from last week's broadcast, threatened to leave the Triple Syndicate and go on their own, and this is all that happened since. Last Sunday, the King of Alburia threatened to leave the alliance after the fractured response to the Estonian crackdowns of the occupied territories. A couple of days later on Tuesday, the Grand Duke Van Nation met with the King of Alburia, and according to reports and later personal statements, the talks were, quote, very constructive. On Thursday, a whole 4 days since the crisis began, a statement was given by the Grand Duke about the crackdowns, saying, "The egregious and excessive use of force in Estonia demands immediate international scrutiny. Therefore, in concert with my esteemed allies within the Triple Syndicate, I unequivocally condemn the unwarranted detention and systematic persecution of rebellion movements. It is a fundamental pillar of international law that movements of resistance are entitled to due process, absent the perpetration of violent acts. Towcester, alongside its allies, urgently calls for the end of these drastic measures, lest further action be required to uphold the principles of justice and self-determination." We here at LNN have been told that this quote came as a shock for many in the room. As you may have seen in the picture, this quote was said in a meeting room. The blunt and direct quote from the Grand Duke himself sparked disbelief in the rooms went against the Grand Duke's very core of being quiet and subtle. Moving on, in one of the 3 island mega factories, and specifically on the island dubbed Isla Rani, a plane crash has been reported in one of the many cargo planes that travel out and in of the mega factories. The cargo plane was carrying its maximum capacity of 650 robots before allegedly suffering 2 engine failures, the failure of the landing gear to deploy, as well as the hydraulic system failing. Now, for one of those things to fail is extraordinarily bad luck, but for 2 systems and 2 engines to fail is nothing short of sabotage. Following the plane crash, politics soon followed, as blaming the wrong nation could spark a conflict. However, despite all the danger, the family of the pilots who died of the plane, as well as the Royal Mechanized Armed Forces, are looking for answers. We will continue to monitor the situation and report as soon as the information becomes public to us. On the note of politics and the Army's line blurring, we now move on to the weekly security brief, where we'll cover any military movements or updates on previously addressed. Firstly, a statement from the cautious president during a live address sparked a vast international and domestic response, the quote being as follows: "Towcester has always claimed to be a nation of peace, a nation of prosperity with little to no crime. I cannot deny the fact Towcester has a low crime rate. However, I am appalled to realise they harbour criminals. I tell you, citizens of Corsland, we finally found the robbers that were terrorising our streets, and just before they were about to finally fall into the righteous hand of justice as felons deserved, they crossed the border into Towcester, a border they swore would be more protected, and they were not turned back, and I didn't even receive a singular phone call from the Grand Duke. This is a betrayal of the trust allies have with one another. I ask you, citizens, do we trust Towcester anymore?" The betrayal has had little to no positive impact internationally. It has had a significant negative impact back home. Internationally, the betrayal of an ally's trust has made international citizens more wary of their alliance being led by Towcester. Protests of varying sizes have sounded in the nations of the Triple Syndicate, yelling at their leaders to leave an alliance that does not have Corsland's or Albridia's national interests first, but Towcester's. If any of these nations leave, it may cause the collapse of the world order that is formed under Towcester. Domestically, the Royal Cabinet of Advisors has had a tiring 7-hour and 43-minute session debating whether or not the harbouring was ethical. However, surprisingly, the Cabinet voted in a majority of yes. Specifically, the vote was 97 ayes to 53 nays. This has already sparked discussion online and in the streets about the fact that more information must be out there about these felons for such a majority to vote yes for a seemingly easy no. Once again, the situation will continue to be monitored by us here at LNN. Secondly, following the substantial military drills coerced by the Kingdom of Castilla last week, they have begun moving troops to their border with Estonia, confirming rumours that defence drills were in preparation for a full Estonian invasion. The Estonian president has yet to speak out about the matter, seemingly distracted with other issues we'll cover shortly. However, despite all the domestic issues happening inside Estonia, we do expect the Estonian president to react to this escalation of tensions between Castilla and Estonia, as even in defensive manners, the truth is that troops have still been moved to a border, heightening the already sky-high tensions between Castilla and Estonia. Lastly, in security brief, the Estonian President Thomas Blake has been distracted by the following. Yesterday, the first step in the removal of the Estonian President was taken. Yesterday, at exactly 2:58 p.m. Estonian Western Time, the articles of impeachment were introduced in the House of Representatives. The Democratic representative for the province of Milton, Greg Thornton, stood up and said, quote, "Mr. Speaker, I rise today to introduce articles of impeachment against the President of the Estonian Federation for high crimes and misdemeanors. End quote. This announcement sent their chamber into chaos, the House having been called into a 1-hour-long recess to take in what just happened. And this was not just Greg Thornton who supported this impeachment, it was most of the Democratic Party. This may be the most serious and recent threat to Estonian leadership since the second stabilization crisis. This vastly developing situation will continue to be monitored by us here at LNN and will be reported on the second more information is brought to our attention. Now, moving on from the tense stories that linger in international headlines to a domestic break, it is time for domestic news stories. First up is that a new recruitment ad for the Royal Mechanized Armed Forces has gone viral online for its brutal depiction of war when you're a soldier in the battlefield. It's hard to explain the masterpiece which is this ad, so in the LNN first we'll play the video with no header, no extra music, just the video. Here it is. Welcome back. You can now hopefully see that would be hard for a news station to explain in the respect it deserves. Back to our domestic stories, however, we have received promising economic reports for the first quarter of the year, and we have reports that GDP of Colchester economy has grown by 1.76% in the first quarter of the year. I'll say that again. We have reports that the GDP of the Colchester economy has grown by 1.76% in the first quarter of the year, a significant jump from the previous 0.73% increase per year last year. The sharp increase could be due to the fact more and more people have been seeing a Made in Colchester label as a staple of luxury. However, most point to the sharp increase of tourists visiting Colchester for the reason of the promising increase in GDP. Now, before we wrap things up in the broadcast, I do have some announcements to read to you. First off, the highway connection between Shifton and Hatford has been closed for roadworks. The closure is suspected to last a maximum of 2 weeks, so do plan your trips accordingly. Secondly, the railway between Crown Cap and the New Hope construction site has been closed for immediate repairs for broken tracks that almost resulted in a derailment. The broken tracks has yet to be located and it may take months for the track to be fully repaired, delaying the mega factory by a few more months. Lastly, the new bus routes that were announced last week are in full swing in Crown Cap City, so do revise the routes and plan your trip across our great capital accordingly. Now, that is all we have for you tonight. Stay tuned for our documentary about the First Great War tomorrow at 6 PM, and I myself will feature as the voice. Until then, I've been Steve and this has been the LNN Weekly Recap. See you tomorrow.